for those who actually don't know you guys and what you cover, Bob, I just thought maybe you'd like to tell the audience about the John Wayne Gacy case. They might be more familiar with the Netflix series on that.
Yeah,
So they know who you are.
sure. So basically, kind of my father's crowning achievement. He's a defense attorney as well, and he was a public defender for many years. I think about 15 years. And when he kind of went out and hung his shingle and went into private practice, this huge case in the Chicagoland area broke, which was this John Wayne Gacy case. And kind of the way that the story goes is that my dad was probably into private practice for about 6 months. My parents had divorced. I think I was living in Colorado at the time, and this story breaks on the 10 o'clock news, and they're showing a bunch of cops coming out of this house in this suburb of Chicago, unincorporated Norridge or Norwood Park. And, they're saying, yeah, police are now pulling out bodies from this house. And immediately, like, you're like, what? Like, what are they doing? And so you're kind of like locked in. And on that first night, the first time that they started pulling the bodies out after, and this was the second search of the house, the first time they hadn't found anything, and then they got a second warrant to go in 10 days later. So that happens. They go right down to the crawl space, and they start unearthing victims' bodies, and they're all skeletal at that point. I think they got like 3 out of the crawl space that first night. And during that, this little short lawyer comes on who says that he's John Wayne Gacy's lawyer. My dad's like, and I'm sitting in so I had traveled to Illinois for Christmas vacation. We get
his parents were divorced.
Yeah, my parents were split. So I come back. I'm with my dad. We're in his apartment. It's me and my dad and my uncle, my father's brother. And this little short attorney comes on. My dad's like, holy shit, I know that guy. That's Sam Amoranti. And my dad gets up and he starts pacing. He's like, oh my God. He's like, should I reach out to Sam to see if he needs help on this case? And at this point in time, we have no idea that there's going to be 33 victims, right? So like the search for the bodies and the victims went on for months. Literally, they destroyed the whole house. They had to rip up the floor because the space in the crawl space, you weren't able to stand. You had like 18 inches, like literally to operate down there. So it was like a nightmare scenario. So my dad, he sends, this is obviously way before emails and faxes.
I just want to chime in real quick, which begs the question when Bob's talking about these 18 inches, how in the hell this old, heavy set, not very fit man was able to alone get down there and hide all the bodies, which is why Bob and people he's working with are continuing to look for more bodies and think Gacy did not act alone. But go on. Sorry, babe.
True. It's true. So so my dad says, should I send him a Western Union? And so I've like taken the blame for him becoming Gacy's lawyer for like whatever it's been 40 years now. Cause I'm like, yeah, dude, I'm 10, I'm like, oh, my dad will be on TV. I'm like, neat. It's like, I don't know what the ramifications, I don't know anything about what I'm watching really, and he sends the Western Union to Sam Amoranti, and Sam gets back to him within minutes of getting that. And Sam's like, I definitely need help. Yeah. Do you want to come on board? First, my dad, like, he kind of freaks out a little bit. And my dad was a public defender in Cook County, which is where Chicago is situated. And in that particular county, you see the worst of the worst. It's a very big city. There's a lot of violent crime. My dad was the head of the felony division. So my dad was a very, very seasoned criminal defense trial lawyer. Probably more so than Sam at that point. And, so my dad, but my dad at first blush is like, he's like, you know what? It's like, I got a bunch of things going on. He's like, I don't think I could do it. And he hangs up the phone, starts ruminating about it for like 15, 20 minutes, picks the phone back up and says, yeah, I'll do it. So from that point forward, he became co-counsel with Amoranti on that case. And if you don't know anything about John Wayne Gacy was active, a serial killer, an American serial killer. active in the Chicagoland area from what we believe is 1972 to 1978. He had a 6-year reign of terror. During that period of time, he has 33 known victims. As Allison said, we happen to believe that there's additional victims that have not been uncovered, that were not buried on the property or thrown in the Des Plaines River. And so, as you can imagine, that's that question that most people want to ask defense attorneys, like, how do you defend somebody like that, right? It's always the first thing that people ask.
For sure.
And, and it's like the answer's simple. One, well, the Constitution demands it. Every single, like, you don't get to pick and choose who the Constitution applies to. Every single citizen of the United States has a right to a fair trial. They have a right to confront their accusers. They have a right to cross-examine witnesses. Those are all things that every single
process, which
into
is
a
what
fair
the
process.
defense attorney's doing.
Right. And so as we, kind of like progress through that case, it becomes obvious very quickly, because Gacy, once he's in custody, gives 5 confessions of sorts on 5 different occasions where they come in and talk to him. He doesn't say that he killed 33 kids, but he admits to 5 of the killings, or 6. And at that point, it becomes obvious to my father that the only defense for this guy is the insanity defense. And so, and the argument there was that he had a compulsion, that he was compelled to do these things, that he couldn't control his mind in a way that he could stop, because there's a couple of different, like, Illinois was kind of a hybrid between McNaughton and, where you don't know right from wrong. You don't have the ability to tell right from wrong. Like, Gacy clearly knew right from wrong. He was hiding the bodies. There was elements of planning and things like that, where it makes it an awful tough sell to convince 33 or 12 people that somebody who killed 33 people should be found not guilty by reason of insanity. That's a really, 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 like, very tall mountain to climb.
You used to be able to argue that someone had a mental illness, that they had a compulsion that they could not control. That's no longer an option in most states. Some states, I think there's some version of it still, but that was the version they were going for.
Right.
And then Bob's dad left him his tapes of his interviews with Gacy during the trial. Bob pitched that to Berlinger, and then it didn't work out, but Berlinger went forward and did the Gacy tapes with other tapes, and didn't tell the full story.
It was my pitch. Yeah. Well, and the thing with Joe is that he put it out there as if they were the trial attorney's tapes, because my dad
said trial. It said tapes during trial or something. It said that in the writing at the start of the series, but it wasn't. There was no female lawyer during the trial. That was the appellate lawyer's.
Who was his very last attorney. So I sat there for.
She's got a question though, babe.
Oh, okay.
That's okay. That's okay. You can keep going. I'll rack my questions up.
Oh, okay. So and you all should listen to my first season of my podcast, which is the Defense Diaries podcast.
The Gacy.
My first season is called the Gacy Tape. So for my 21st birthday, my father gave me all his taped interviews with John Wayne Gacy, prepping him for trial, with the insanity defense, in the back of my father's mind. So everything that you're hearing is my father going back and forth with Gacy, trying to get him to basically tell him what happened, because with an insanity defense, you're not claiming that you didn't do the crime. By operation of law, you've admitted that you've done the crimes, but you're saying that my mind didn't allow me to conform to the law. So
yep.
They're fascinating. I sat on them for 35 years. I didn't know what to do with them. And then finally I decided, I first tried to license the sound to Berlinger, because after the Bundy tapes dropped, like that night, I emailed Joe and I'm like, hey, just want to let you know, I've got some tapes that I think you might be interested in. And so then that started 9 months of negotiations. I couldn't work it out. Like Allison said, I moved on, which was a blessing in disguise, because that pushed me into doing the podcast, which I had been contemplating for a couple of years at that point. And so I do this incredibly deep dive into that case. I I intertwined the sound from the tapes into the long running narrative. I didn't want to focus on Gacy. Everybody's heard the Gacy story. No one needs to know all his bullshit about growing up and in Iowa and the arrest and all that shit. I wanted to focus on the victims who I knew nothing about, nothing. And I knew everything about the case. 33 young men and boys, and I knew nothing about them other than Rob Peast, his last victim. So I made that a focus, and I wanted to focus on the investigation, the arrest, and the trial, which is exactly what I did. And it was an incredible experience in a lot of different ways. It was very cathartic for me. It was just one of those experiences where I didn't realize that, like, Gacy had been a weird part of my life for 40 years. You know, I'm an old guy at this point, and I didn't really realize until I like ended that series, which was 36 episodes. It was really 33 with
but 3 parts.
right, a 3-part final. But I'm very, very proud of the work. You know, I was able to accomplish everything I wanted to in terms of really trying to focus on the victims. That's Berlinger's thing. That's not my thing. That was my pitch to Berlinger, and he ran with that.
So ours is under Defense Diaries, the Gacy tapes. That's
a 3-parter. Mine is, like I said, 33 plus 3 episodes. 33 was in memorial of the victims. You know, and I really wanted to end it on 33 because it was important to me. But at any rate, I'm like, you know, I went and talked to all the old cops and interviewed them. I had the lead prosecutor performed his entire closing argument, which had the hairs on my arm standing up. My father performed his, because I had the transcripts from the trial. My father performed his opening statement, which is brilliant. If you ever want to have an understanding of the insanity defense in terms of what it was at that time, my father's opening statement is unbelievable. It's just incredible. You know, and it was just an amazing experience, and we uncovered just an unbelievable story, which is how they really got Gacy, what they did to get Gacy, and it's mind-blowing. And I don't want to give anybody a spoiler, but that in and of itself is worth the listen. And it came directly from the cops, and I was able to vet it. And it's an incredible story in terms of how they got Gacy. It's just,
so if the audience wants to hear your version of it, it's on Defense Diaries, the YouTube channel.
No,
podcast.
Yeah, it's okay. So we originally we brought all the straight up podcast, like audio only podcast episodes over to YouTube, but like we kept hearing that because there's no video, it was driving our numbers down, because people would click on it thinking they were going to be watching a video, because YouTube is a visual thing. And then when they found that they're only getting sound, they'd stop listening like 60 seconds in. So we pulled them off, or we privated them. So no, anywhere you get podcasts, if you listen to podcasts, we're on Apple, Spotify, everywhere you get your podcast. Audible, everywhere you listen to them. And it's great to listen to if you're walking your dog, if you're exercising, you're doing chores, you're going to sleep at night. It's probably not the best if you're going to sleep, because
Bob's voice, his podcast voice, is amazing. And sometimes I would put it on when I was tired to go to sleep listening to, because he could read bedtime stories. It would be, you know, so it is good to listen to at night, but not good to listen to at night, because you can't, it's the type of podcast you actually need to pay attention to.
Right.
Yeah, it's a lot. And that was kind of where I developed this concept. Like when I left practicing law and I decided I was going to do this, that I wanted to really educate people on the legal system and how it works. Because like everybody who loves true crime, you watch it, and sometimes you don't necessarily understand what they're talking about, especially when it gets to the trial level, you know, and there's just terms of art, and there's legalese that's used, and they're talking about motions to suppress, and there's terms that are used. So I spend a lot of time, and I called it, it's your favorite time. It's my favorite time. It's in whatever I was going to explain, it's motion to suppress time. And then I would kind of give like a law school type dissertation, but try to make it entertaining to educate people on what the certain aspects of the law were that lay people may not understand. And the hope was that that would really help people enhance their enjoyment of true crime, this thing that we all kind of love for whatever reason. So yeah, it's a pretty good podcast. I'm pretty proud of it. You know, so I recommend everybody give it a listen.